Greetings friends, I'm Bobby, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about some books that I have had for such a long time and just never read. Some of these books I've had since I was at university. That was more than 5 years ago. Actually, one of the books I think I've had since I was about 16. But, you know, I've had these books a very long time and just not read them. So the first book I want to talk about today is one that has actually become a joke between me and my best friend. Like, we both bought this book when it first came out at the beginning of 2019, and nearly 2 years later, neither of us have even picked it up. Like, we've both completely forgotten what it's about, and we've just been putting it off. And that book is The Binding by Bridget Collins. I've even got a signed edition. And I've just never read it. It's just been sitting on my shelf. I barely remember what this book's about. But it's got nice purple edges. And the cover is beautiful. And look at the hardcover. Without a dust jacket. It's so beautiful. This book is about a man called Emmett who is summoned to begin an apprenticeship in order to become a bookbinder. The books that he is binding are memories that people want to forget, but then one day he discovers a book with his own name on it. I just think this book sounds really intriguing, like a world where you can choose to have your memories taken away if they're like bad memories or bring back bad feelings or anything. And you can just have them cast away and stored in a book. But then imagine if you discover that memory again. Like, you have no idea that you've had this memory taken from you, and then you discover that something so bad has happened to you that you just want to forget about it. I would be intrigued to read that book, but also kind of terrified. But to be honest, I've had this book for so long that, like I said, I barely remembered what happens in the story, and the fact that it's been sitting on my shelf for so long has become intimidating to me. So I really want to pick this up sometime in the new year, because I really should get to these books soon. So the second book on my list is Blind by Rachel DeWoskin. I remember seeing this book in a shop one time and it really intrigued me, but I didn't pick it up that time. And then I was thinking about it for months afterwards and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I eventually had to buy it online. But despite how intrigued I was to read it in the first place, I still haven't read it in about 6 years. So this book is about a girl called Emma who has an accident which causes her to go blind. And it's about her experience relearning the world with her new disability. I will say there is a trigger warning as this book mentions suicide, so please be aware of that if you're interested in picking it up. I think this book is going to be really interesting because personally I've only read a few books which have disabled characters in them. However, I think it will be strange because this is written by someone who isn't blind but has only researched it. So it's not an own voices story, but it is representing a disabled community. And I did look up the author and I think she has done a few other books about other disabled characters. So I think she's clearly interested in this topic. I think she might just want to show some representation of people who are different. And this kind of reminds me of Jacqueline Wilson, who I read a lot as a child, who always wrote stories about characters who were always in some unfortunate situation. She wrote about characters who had disabled siblings or single parent families or really dysfunctional families that had lots of troubles. And I think it is quite interesting to read books about these characters because it's a perspective that I haven't experienced and I want to learn more about that kind of situation. So I think it's going to be really interesting to read this character's perspective as she learns a new way to experience the world. So the third book on my list I don't physically have with me right now, but it is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. This is a young adult magical realism story about a girl who is born with wings, and it follows 3 generations of Ava's family, I believe starting with her grandmother, and then her mother, and then Ava. as Ava tries to work out who she is. This book was really popular about 5 or 6 years ago, and I only really bought it because of the hype. But I've heard so many good things about this story, and I don't really know why I've been putting it off. It's not a particularly long book, it's only about 300 and something pages, so it shouldn't take too long to read, and it is young adult, so it should be a fairly easy read as well. The whole concept of the story sounds really mysterious and intriguing, and I just really need to stop putting it off because it sounds like it is going to be so good. The third book on my list is Poison Study by Maria V. Schneider. This is a young adult fantasy about a girl called Yelena who is about to be executed, but she is offered the chance to escape if she becomes a food taster for the commander of their land. This means that she is risking being poisoned every day, and she is in a lot of danger. So I've had this book since about 2016, but it actually came out in 2005. So it is probably full of some really bad tropes, and I expect hardly any diversity. I think I bought this book just because I saw it in the shop and it looked interesting, but it was at a time when I was just buying lots of books for the sake of it, but I never really gave myself the chance to read this book. The whole idea of this story sounds really interesting to me, and I think there are 3 other books in this series, so if I enjoy this story, there's quite a lot to be reading as well. So, like the other books, I've had this book for such a long time that it really isn't a priority to me. However, because it has been on my shelf for so long, I am basically just avoiding it now, which is kind of bad. I really need to stop doing that to my books. So the next book on my list is The Winner's Curse by Marie Rudkowski. This book, funnily enough, I bought exactly the same time as Poison Study. Don't know why I always remember that, but it is a fact that is fixed in my brain now. So this is a young adult fantasy about a teenage girl called Kestrel who is the daughter of an army general, and she is told that she either has to marry or join the military. The synopsis also says that she buys a slave at auction, which it's a bit of a dodgy thing to do, like a bit of a dodgy subject, and I'm interested to see how that is handled in this story, especially as this book was written in 2014, so it is fairly recent, so it has no reason to do anything offensive. Like, it should find a respectful way to deal with such a serious topic. So, from what I remember, I initially bought this because of hype, but I don't really know how interested I am in it anymore. And I didn't even remember what it was about until I looked it up for this video. But despite how recently the book came out and how long I've had it on my shelf, I still don't know how much I actually want to read this book. It deals with difficult topics, and young adult isn't really my thing anymore. Like, I've definitely started to grow out of it, as I have mentioned in previous videos, so I'm not sure whether or not I will actually try to read this book. So the next book is a book I've had since I was about 16 years old, and that is Sabriel by Garth Nix. I remember being given this as a gift, and I had had it for a while, but then one day I saw it in my room and decided I would try reading it. I read the prologue and maybe the first chapter, but then didn't go any further than that, even though I really enjoyed that first chapter. So this story deals with necromancy, and it is about a girl called Sabriel who attends a boarding school, but then discovers that her father has gone missing and she has to go on a quest to find him. So this is quite a popular series, and it was initially written about 25 years ago. So it is a complete series, and I have no reason not to read the series. Like, if I found the beginning of the story that interesting, why didn't I just read the rest of it? So I believe there are 6 books in this series, so I would assume that it would be quite in-depth. I think the reason I didn't continue reading this book is because at the time I wasn't that intensely into reading, and I never thought to just sit down and read a book but for the sake of enjoying a story. So I do think I want to read this book again, and then maybe I could read the whole series if I enjoy this one. Because, I mean, it's supposed to be really popular, and it's so different to what I normally read. Like, I I haven't read books about necromancy before, so I think that will be quite fun to read about. So the 7th book on my list is The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. This is a book that my grandma used to talk to me about a lot, and I don't remember whether she said good things about it or not, but it always makes me think of her, and I feel like I should read it just for her. This is a historical fiction novel set in 17th century Amsterdam, and it is about an 18-year-old girl called Nella who moves to Amsterdam to live with her new husband. Nella's husband gives her a miniature version of their house as a wedding gift, and Nella employs a miniaturist to make it look exactly the same as their house with all the furniture and everything. And this leads to a lot of mysterious things happening in their home. So as far as I'm aware, this was a very oppressive time period, especially for women, and it was very focused on religion and money. So I think that'll be quite an interesting perspective to read about. So I've had this book for about 6 years, and I was really excited to read this book when I first got it, but it just never became a priority for me, and it just got left behind. So I think I might try and read it within the coming year. The next book on my list is another one that I don't have on me right now, but that is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. This is a young adult fantasy about 2 young witches who have to flee their land because of a war between empires. Safi is a truth witch, so she can tell when people are lying, and she is hiding because she does not want to be used as a weapon in their war. So this book is about different lands and empires who are in the midst of a magical war, which I think sounds really fun. I think it has a huge focus on friendship and freedom, which just sounds so good. So I bought this book about 5 years ago because of the hype, and then I was just, I think, a bit intimidated by it. I had recently become influenced by BookTube, and I was just buying books for the sake of other people saying they were good. And then I just had too many books and I didn't read any of them. So yeah, I've had it for so long now that it just stopped being a priority for me, but I really want to change that this coming year, and I need to get to this book. The next book on my list is Wolf by Wolf by Ryan Groden. I bought this book because of Reagan at Peru's project about 5 years ago, and it just sounds so interesting to me. It is about an alternate reality where Hitler won World War II, and it involves a motorcycle race to win Hitler's favour. I don't know a lot more of the details about that story, and I do want to go into it not knowing too much, but it does sound so fun. I think alternate realities are so interesting. I love these whole parallel world things. They sound so much fun. But this story has really intrigued me for a long time, and I really want to get to it soon. The last book on my list is Horns by Joe Hill. This is a book that I bought at university, and I remember buying it because I saw a movie poster featuring Daniel Radcliffe, and I thought that the story sounded really interesting. And when I realised that it was based on a book, I bought this book straight away. I don't tend to read a lot of horror because I'm really a wimp, but this book just sounds like it has such an interesting plot. It is about a man who is punished by the devil and given ram's horns, and I think it's a revenge story about his girlfriend who got attacked, and he's going to find the person who attacked her. I think this plot sounds really interesting and a lot of fun, but also a little bit terrifying. I really want to give this book a go because I want to break into a new genre, and I think I'm ready for it now. After 5 years, I think I'm finally ready for it. So that is my list of 10 books that I've had for a really long time and still haven't read. Most of these books I think I should be getting to within the next year because I've had them for so long, and it's about time I just get to them. I need to stop making up excuses not to read them. So hopefully you'll be hearing about them in wrap-ups in the next year, and everything will be good. So that's it for today's video. If you have read any of these books and have any opinions on them, then please let me know in the comments. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye!